The Sustainable Development Commission is the UK government's independent advisory body on sustainability issues. Its new chair, Will Day, described the background that led him to taking up his new position.
I've had a very privileged background in the sense that I started working after my university. I started working in East Africa for one of the UK's largest NGOs, Save the Children Fund, in East Africa. And I found myself in Uganda, Sudan, Ethiopia, Kenya, Somalia in the early 1980s, responding to some of the famines and huge displacements of people that were happening at the time. Following on from that, I helped set up a grant-giving organisation in the UK called Comic Relief, which raised public awareness around issues of poverty and humanitarian need, and raised money and supported good works with that money. And it eventually ended up running one of the larger NGOs here called Care International, a relief and development NGO, because I was increasingly recognising that the opposite of poverty, which underpins an awful lot of the problems I was seeing, is actually some sort of prosperity. But I didn't see the sort of prosperity working for poor people. So a whole lot of questions were jangling around in my head as to how do we get the system to work better for everybody. And that sort of brought me here because the process that the Sustainable Development Commission is trying to support and encourage is to make sure that those people who do things best do them. Is it the role of government to do certain things? Is it the role of the private sector? Is it the role of broader society? How do we deal with the big challenges that we're all facing?
Mr. Day outlined the role of the Sustainable Development Commission.
We are part scrutineer, we partly monitor government for progress against its commitments around sustainable development, and we're part advisor. We're called a critical friend. We have one foot inside, which is very important. We build trusting relationships with people in government and in the civil service, and we're part outside because we also have a watchdog function, a monitoring function, so that we can actually assess whether government is living up to its promises. And then we report. We say, we don't think this department is achieving what it should do. We don't think this policy is actually a sensible one. We are concerned about commitments to certain sorts of energy sources. So alongside those roles, we also undertake research into contentious areas such as nuclear power, wind power, tidal energy. Are these good or bad in terms of the long term? Are they the right answers to the UK's, in that particular case, energy problem?
He said the new global, social and environmental realities faced by all nations require thoughtful and decisive action by government, business and wider society.
Climate change in many ways is the biggest of them because it's the most immediate, but importantly, sustainable development is not just about climate, it's also about the social aspects of a fair and just society. It's trying to get the balance right between the need to respect the environment and live within the carrying capacity of the planet and the need to have a healthy society. And a healthy society is a society on the whole which is less unequal, where people can realise their aspirations and have opportunities. And so if we look ahead, climate tends to dominate, and of course in the case of the UK and in the case of the Commission, we're interested in seeing reductions in the use of carbon, so the progress towards a low carbon economy. Government here has made lots of very big commitments, has actually legislated to reduce the carbon in our economy. That's partly a domestic issue, but of course we live on a single planet, and it means that we're starting now to work out how to make the sorts of international links that will be necessary for everybody to be part of that solution.
Of particular interest to the new chair will be the Copenhagen climate change talks taking place in December.
We have a commission-wide and we have a national interest in seeing those talks resolve the single greatest challenge to humanity at the moment. It's incredibly important that those talks do realise agreement between nations to basically move the whole planet towards a low-carbon future.
Will Day takes over as chairman from environmental campaigner Jonathan Porritt, who stepped down after 9 years in the post, and he's now relishing the challenge of his new job.
It is both challenging and worthwhile, so I am both daunted and excited in equal measure. It's a real privilege working with fellow commissioners all of whom have an absolute passion for sustainable development. My worry slightly, of course, is that sustainability is becoming a jargon phrase if we're not careful, but actually it's little more than common sense. And I think in 15 or 20 years' time, or maybe less far ahead than that, people will look back and say, why didn't you get it earlier? It's common sense.
Mr. Day says he takes on the job at a time of complex change, but he is excited by the challenge and responsibility of his new position. He says the cause of sustainable development needs to be promoted with increasing urgency and vigour in the months and years ahead.